present For the Record.
Just ahead, troubling news as more students than ever seriously consider suicide in Wisconsin.
It is scary, and it's been happening for far too long.
Plus, how your taxes may be spent next year as we talk to the people who control the state budget.
Make sure that we fund our core priorities, the essential services.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Naomi Coles. A sobering picture of youth mental health in Wisconsin this week as a new survey conducted every 2 years is released showing a startling rise in youth who are seriously considering suicide. The Youth Risk Behavioral Survey is a partnership between the CDC and Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. And we have a full panel today to discuss how to understand these results. I am joined by Molly Herman, Abigail Sweats with the Department of Public Instruction, and then Dr. Matt Dahl with SSM Health's Behavioral Health Team. Welcome all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's just start with the top line findings. What's the most concerning data trends that this survey exposed?
I think the first thing you have to realize is that obviously this data is stark, and it is sad, and it is scary, and it's been happening for far too long. So we see that 18.1% of all students reported seriously considering suicide in the previous 12 months. That's a scary statistic, and it's been trending in the wrong direction since 2011. We also need to recognize that some of our students within that all-student group are hurting more than others and are struggling with these challenges more than others. Our female students have a higher rate of considering suicide, and our LGBTQ plus students do as well, significantly higher. And I do want to point out that our data is about lesbian, gay, and bisexual students because we have not been able to finish crunching the numbers concerning our transgender and non-binary students. So those results are on the way. And so I wanted to pause there because I know Molly has been thinking about this data in sort of a different kind of way.
Thanks, Abby. So sometimes when we talk about percentages and numbers, it can be hard to kind of visualize or apply it to our lives. So if you can think of 4 LGBTQ students, imagine that 2 of them, so if you've got those 4 students in your mind or 4 young people in your life, that 2 of them have considered suicide and at least 1 of them has attempted. And so for me, that really drives it home visually and when I think about young people in my life.
Absolutely. And just, I'll pause here with just something that our newsroom hears a lot. I have, just in the past month or 2, I know we've been contacted by, I want to say 3 to 4 parents throughout our DMA who either knew or had a friend whose child just did that, or they themselves had someone do that. And I believe at least 1 to 2 of them were in that LGBTQ plus community. Dr. Dahl, what are you hearing? Your expertise here is talking to these children. What are you hearing from them?
Well, I think it reflects the data. They're as distressed and struggling, especially in this identified groups. Anyone that's disenfranchised has a heavier burden, and to not feel supported by those around you or in the community in struggles with mental health, but even just the day-to-day. So I really see a lot of the reflection of the adults in the world not behaving well. And they're talking about the frustrations they're having, but also it's just a scary place to be, and these thoughts are thoughts that perhaps occur, but as we've discussed, they have occurred far too long, and now just the statistics on number of attempts is startling itself.
I couldn't agree more, and I also think about how that one supportive adult can make such a difference. We know from the data that one supportive adult can reduce suicidality, and it makes me think, imagine if the whole community was that supportive adult, if we could all come together and do that. And it might sound odd, but this data gives me a tiny bit of hope because it is so stark, and you use the word sobering in your introduction. It's hard to look away from, and that's good. Because if we could come together as a community to realize that mental health challenges are very real for our youth right now, and come together and realize that a certain group of our students are hurting even more, if we can do that, then we also have to come together for a solution. Because our kids are listening to the language we use and the rhetoric that is happening. And if that language is heard by a student with the identity that is being weaponized, that creates an impact. And on a student who doesn't share that identity, who might know someone, right? And if a supportive adult can make such a difference, so can an unsupportive adult. And I think that's why our whole community really needs to see these statistics and have a wake-up call.
Dr. Dahl, you said something very specific. You said adults behaving badly. I I want you, all three of you, to explain exactly what each of you thinks that means, both in Wisconsin and nationwide. What are we seeing where adult behavior is contributing to this phenomenon? I'll start with you.
Sure. So I think that there's been a lot of conversation in the media and in schools around how to treat LGBTQ students, and really what they need is what all students need: an inclusive learning environment where they feel welcomed and supported. Abby talked about a supportive adult, so school's a great opportunity for that supportive adult to be, and that it doesn't take something huge. It can be using inclusive language in the classroom. It can be greeting a student with the name or pronoun that they've requested. It could be including, stories in curriculum that are inclusive of all students and all identities. And so I think there's really an opportunity in schools. And then speaking of those other environments, so also at home and at work, if students work, and then in their friend groups. So wouldn't it be great if there was support in all four, so we could kind of wrap around those students that need it most, so everywhere they go, they've got that kind of nest to land in of support.
I also think we need to remember that we're talking really about people who interact with the children directly, but these children live in a world that is not truly safe for them yet. And I think we can continue to build on progress that has happened, but we're not far enough, specifically for our trans and non-binary students. And children, right? Like, as a former educator, I often think of them as students, but they are children out in the community as well, and they hear what we're saying as leaders, as adults. And if, again, an identity is really weaponized, that has an impact on a child, just like it has an impact on anyone. And I think we have to remember that our interactions with each other are heard by the children. Just like our interactions with them really matter, we have to also intervene when we hear this other language happening, even when it's just among adults.
Dr. Dahl, anything to add before we take a break?
I would agree. I think one of the central tenets for me is objectification. It's really the root of all evil. And so once we start using language that objectifies someone, it seems that our humanity fades. We're able to do and say things that are just horrendous. Mm-hmm. And when you think about our leaders, the adults in the world that are using language and purposely creating anxiety. I talk to kids about their brains all the time. This is your feeling brain and your thinking brain, right? And it kind of looks like a brain. The messages are just hitting us so much with negativity that everybody's thinking brain's offline. And it's done purposely because it's easier to control people when you can keep them scared. And so adults need to help self-regulate themselves so our children can learn to self-regulate and have some hope about the future. I hear a lot about climate anxiety. I hear a lot about all of our groups that are disenfranchised, and legitimately so. They're being bullied. There's a negativity that goes along with this that they just don't have the social emotional capacity to handle, and that's on us grown-ups. Now there's hope. I don't want to be totally dismal. As you said, it's that one relationship, right? It's somebody saying, oh, I don't understand. What's this pronoun? What does that mean? Just ask, right? Or I don't understand your culture. And so there is some movement to have these conversations, like you said, stark but hopeful.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back talking factors driving these trends, talking solutions.